Hi, folks. I'm still alive. Um, had an MRI done, and they couldn't find any cancer, but the pain continues. So, having another test done soon. But anyway, that's not why I'm making this video. Um, I wanted to do an update to my post from 10 years ago, actually 11 years ago, I think it is, about what it takes to be a successful musician. I don't think that what I said there was wrong, necessarily. Um, but I feel like that post was about how to be a successful musician in the world of jam based rock, which I'm sure a lot of people they just abhor. But what I said about to be successful in the world of jam based rock, you do have to be a fantastic musician because there's a high standard for instrumental abilities in jam rock, and jam rock is kind of like it's outside of the norm of the world of music, um, because you don't have to be a great singer to have a successful jam band. Um, and you don't have to write great lyrics to be a successful jam band. It's harder and harder to be a successful jam band because there aren't as many jam fans now as there were uh, in the 90s, but it still goes on. There's still a segment of the population that likes that. But I just wanted to kind of update, my, as far as being a successful musician is concerned. I was kind of ignorant of what it takes to be a successful musician as far as rock music is concerned. Now, even rock is now becoming kind of passe, I mean, when they say rock is dead, I think it might actually be dead at this point, or at least it's close to death as it's ever been. There's always a chance that rock could be revived by somebody at some point, but I doubt it'll ever be what it once was. And it's been around for a long time, and it's kind of like jazz. Jazz had its heyday. Rock has had its heyday. I think it might be over for rock's heyday. I think it does seem like electronic music is sort of the new, um, you know, the new hotness, as they say. Um, so, but I wanted to make this about as far as being a successful rock musician is concerned. A lot of the things I said in the first video don't apply as much to rock music, and I think for the most part, I mean, having connections always helps, and so that's a good thing. But you don't always need connections, because I just want to outline the key ingredients to having a successful rock band. Um, Number one is somebody is usually the talent. There's usually one guy who is the talent. I caution against assuming that your talent would pull you through in the earlier video about being a successful musician, but that depends on the talent. Some people do have a talent, and the key talents are uh, one is vocals. That's pretty much the number one talent. Um, and it's not just about. There's a lot of great singers out there, so you can say, well, I mean, it's not just about having good vocals. There's a lot of people in bands who are great singers who will never go anywhere. But it's not so much necessarily about having great technical vocals, although that in the modern day that really matters, especially in pop music, not as much in rock music. Rock music has never been as based on pure vocals or pure vocal technical ability, I should say. It is based on vocals, but the actual technical ability, most pop music is about this sort of R&B soul vocal that's been used basically since the 90s, late 90s. It sort of dominated the world of pop music. And they all sound the same to me. It's all this, woo, woo, woo. I mean, that doesn't sound anything like what it really sounds like. But you know what I mean. It's like this sort of, it's very clean kind of sound. It's not. There's no edge to it. It's more soulful. It's in it, but it's. I mean, it makes me sick. I mean, just to see everybody singing with that same voice. I mean, it just it's become so homogenized at this point that it's really boring. That same soul voice that everyone's using. Everyone's trying to sound like Christina Aguilera. Um, you know, I mean, not now these days. It's like I guess the modern equivalent would be like I don't even really know because I'm out of touch because I'm old. But if I had to guess, I'd say I mean Beyonce. I mean she's obviously from the past too. These days, I guess Camila Cabello or something like that. I don't know. It's the only name that comes to mind immediately. Shawn Mendes, that kind of BS. These voices are a dime a dozen, but so yeah, when I talk about having good rock vocal, it's really not so much about technical prowess as it is in the and it's really just about technical soul prowess, really, being able to do vocal acrobatics. That's not what rock vocals are about. Rock vocals are about uniqueness and a pleasing tone. It doesn't. You don't have to be a great singer to be a successful rock vocalist, but you do have to have a voice that's pleasant to the ear, which is a hard thing to define. But I think it's pleasant to the ear and it's unique. Some people would say that Bob Dylan didn't have a good voice, but I disagree. I think he was more of a folk musician than a rock musician, but he was really both. And he evolved into being more of a rock musician, and his voice just had a certain uniqueness and a pleasantness to it. It's hard to say to really define that exactly, but it's definitely about having a certain unique tone that's not that's tuneful. It's in tune. It's not about doing kind of vibrato or doing fast melodic runs or anything like that. It's that helps a little bit, but not as much for rock. Rock is more about singing with conviction. I think that's part of it. Rock is usually about being able to sing kind of forcefully, not belting, but just singing in a way that expresses passion. Um, but in a voice that's different, a voice that has its own place. If your voice sounds too much like everyone else's voice when you sing, then you don't really distinguish yourself. Guys like Tom Petty, um, guys like Robert Plant, um, these even guys whose voices I don't like. Like what is it, Chris Squire from Yes? Is that the guy who sings? I don't even know. Phil Collins. I mean, these people all had, this is going way back. If you want to talk about more modern day, I mean, coming forward, Lenny Kravitz or um, even more modern than that, I suppose, what's his name? The guy, I suppose, well, it's hard to, Jack White, he's still around. There aren't too many modern rock stars to point to, so it's hard for me to go any more modern than that. Whoever the guy from the Black Keys is, I don't really know the names of the modern rock stars are not nearly as their names aren't known as ubiquitously as they once were. So whatever the modern rock stars are. But you have to have a voice that's in tune, that expresses passion and has a unique quality to it. And I think that's the first key to having success. As far as that's the first signature of talent in rock music, is having that kind of a voice. Paul McCartney, John Lennon, it goes on and on. It doesn't have to be a perfectly polished voice like in the pop world, but it has to be distinctive, and it has to be basically in tune more often than not, and it has to be, sung with conviction. So I think that's a big part of it. That's number one. Number two is you got to write songs. This is important. Being a good songwriter, there is a craft to writing a song. I think a lot of it really comes down to the vocal. Like I said, if you have that kind of unique vocal, then even a mediocre song becomes a good song on a lot of situations. Because I think the real core of it is that when it comes to rock music, people like hearing it's not so much that a song has to be entirely unique as it sounds more unique because of that specific voice being a part of it. But That's not to say that there isn't a craft to writing songs and that there isn't a certain, that sort of the archetypal song has a certain flow to it. The chorus is obviously important. Um, there's usually a hook of some sort to the song. Those kind of things, are relevant. So there are people that are better at doing that than other people. And I think that's part of it, just sort of like the crafting of the song, being somebody who understands classic song forms and, knows how to apply those. Also, being somewhat creative with, I mean, usually there's not really a lot of requirement for creativity with chord changes, but really good rock music does have some kind of fun innovations or, chord changes or, um, misdirection that happens. And so that all goes into being a good songwriter. So yeah, having something that's something that's and not too cliche. I mean, you don't want to be following the songwriting patterns of everyone who came before you. You have to sort of make your own sound. But but yeah, there's a certain you need to have a certain uniqueness to your songwriting also, but not so unique that it's unrecognizable, because it has to at least appeal to a decent amount of people. So songwriting is a big part of it, and the vocals and the songwriting are very closely tied together, and also tied together with the vocals and the songwriting are the third element, which is the lyrics. The lyrics, you have to know how to write a lyric that's not, just pedestrian and boring. It's not just kind of like, it can't be direct. It has to sound important without necessarily having any innate importance. It has to sound like it's saying something very deep and very meaningful, even though it also needs to be. It's a real skill writing a lyric that sounds like it's meaningful but doesn't necessarily mean anything specifically. It's almost like a paradox. Um, and that's really kind of that's another skill. I never had anything like that skill, and even though I think that the most important part of songs are all in the actual kind of the sounds being made. More people than not are very concerned with lyrics and want to be able to identify with lyrics. I think lyrics are, they're not bad. I mean, I appreciate a good lyric, but at the same time, I know that it's kind of, it doesn't, most lyrics, they mean something to the artist themselves, but they can be taken in so many ways that you can appreciate the talent which it takes to write these lyrics, but I think people kind of give them more credence than they're worth most of the time. Um, it can be fun to relate to lyrics in your own way, and I think that's what most people like, is that they can apply well-written lyrics to their own life situation and have it give added meaning to their own existence in their minds anyway. um, but yeah, writing lyrics, somewhat poetically, not exactly like a poem, because it's not like writing a poem. It's not quite like that. It has more mass appeal than poetry does. But basically, when it really comes down to it, is having something that's ambiguous but also sounds like it has deep meaning. That's what really writing lyrics is all about, and also has a certain um, certain rhythmic flow that works with the music. That's important too. You can't write lyrics that go outside of the rhythm of the music that you're working with, because it just sounds awkward and it doesn't really work. You shouldn't try to cram in a bunch of highfalutin lyrics that don't really fit the song. You can use lyrics that one popular thing to do is to use lyrics that are sad in a happy song, lyrics that are um, happy in a sad song. But that's not as important as just having something that fits, that works rhythmically and a melody line that fits well too. So yeah, that's those I think are and then after that, the other major key I would say is having a good drummer, especially drummer and or rhythm section. I mean, I don't think the bass is as important, but you have to have a good drummer to be successful. So if you're not the guy, you know, I was hoping that I could be a good songwriter. I think I can write songs that aren't bad, but they're not gonna have the kind of appeal that a really talented songwriter. It took me a while to, maybe not that long, but for the most part, I realized that the music that I write doesn't have mass appeal. There's a certain songwriting that has appeal to, fans of rock music, and a large group of fans of rock music, I should say. And it should be pretty clear, if you're not writing songs that are like simple 3 to 4 minute songs that that have good lyrics and you have your own unique voice, as I mentioned, then it should be pretty clear that you're not going to be successful as a rock star unless you're trying to go off into an area like I was trying to work in, which was the jam field, or something that's a little outside of the norm. But these days, there's so few successful rock musicians. I don't know. It's almost not even worth me making this video. This would have been relevant about maybe 30 years ago, something like that. But yeah, that's my opinion. If you're not the guy who has the songwriting and the voice and all that kind of thing, then you got to find the guy who is and jump on his coattails. It should be pretty obvious, if you have that ability or not. And it should be, if you find somebody who does have it. I mean, you don't see it as much in the modern day, but if you find somebody who has that unique voice, and has a unique songwriting ability and knows how to write lyrics, grab on and try to rise to stardom. Because these guys, like Tom Petty, for example, I was watching his documentary yesterday about the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and he had a pretty good band around him, and especially his guitar player was probably the other biggest element of their success, because he was a very good guitar player. But at the same time, Tom Petty had a lot of success with Tom Petty had a lot of success later on in his career, playing with other musicians, other backing musicians, and yeah, it just goes to show, I mean, there's a lot of really good instrumentalists out there, and the key of the whole thing is the main talent, is the main singer-songwriter. He's sort of the crux of the situation in most cases. I mean, there are bands that are more than the sum of its parts. That's not to say that that's all that matters, but it's the key factor, having that one guy who's sort of the idea man. You could say that Led Zeppelin, well, every member of Led Zeppelin was important, but Jimmy Page wrote the songs. You could have somebody who's the song guy. Sure, the other ones wrote some songs, but there's usually one guy who's kind of like the main, the main talent as far as songwriting is concerned. Every now and again, you'll find other situations where everyone contributes a little bit, but that seems to be much rarer to me. So, if you think you're just going to be successful being a great musician, well, I think you kind of have to, find that, you're pretty replaceable if you're a good instrumentalist, But the talent, that's the guy with the voice, the guy, that knows how to write music and write lyrics, that are unique. That's not easy to find. So if you're not that guy, if you are that guy, you actually have a pretty good shot at making it. But if you're not that guy, then find that guy, jump on his coattails. That's probably the only way you're gonna get where you want to go. So that's it for So You Want to Be a Rock Star, basically, which barely exists anymore. I think the next video I make will be about, electronic musician, which I know very much less about, so I'll do my best. But that'll be part 3.